You wake up in darkness, curled into a perfect ball inside your mother's womb. Your scales are soft, more like skin than armor, but they're already forming the pattern that will define your entire existence. You don't know it yet, but you're about to be born into a world that doesn't understand you, a world that will hunt you, fear you, and ultimately push your kind to the edge of extinction. But for now, you're safe, floating in warmth, completely unaware of what's coming. Your mother has been carrying you for months, her body growing heavier as you develop inside her. She's been careful, staying hidden during the day, foraging only when absolutely necessary. Pregnancy has made her vulnerable, and she knows it. Every sound could be danger, every shadow could hide a predator. She's not just protecting herself anymore, she's protecting you. Then, after what feels like forever, something shifts, the pressure builds, and your mother's body starts the process that will bring you into the world. You don't fight it. You can't. Your tiny claws push against the walls that have contained you, and slowly, gradually, you begin to emerge. It's not dramatic or violent, just a quiet, almost gentle transition from one world to another. You're born blind, helpless, and completely dependent on your mother. Your scales are pale and flexible, nothing like the hardened armor they'll become. You weigh less than most house cats, and your movements are clumsy and uncoordinated. If anything found you right now, you'd be dead in seconds. But your mother is there, and for the moment, that's enough. She doesn't leave you alone, not even for a second. Her massive body curves around you, creating a living fortress of scales and muscle. You press against her warmth, instinctively seeking the comfort and protection she provides. This is your entire world now, the space between her belly and the ground, shielded from everything else that exists. Your first meal doesn't come from hunting or foraging. It comes directly from your mother, warm and perfectly suited to your tiny digestive system. You don't have to work for it or compete for it. It's simply there when you need it. Your mother produces exactly what you require, and you consume it without question. This is how life begins, simple, safe, and completely reliant on someone else's sacrifice. The den your mother chose isn't fancy. It's just a hollow in the ground, maybe under a fallen log or between some rocks. But it's hidden, and more importantly, it's defensible. If something comes looking for trouble, your mother can block the entrance with her body, turning herself into a living wall. She's thought this through, planned for every possibility. Your survival depends on her making all the right choices, and so far, she has. Days pass in this routine. You sleep, you feed, you grow. Your mother barely moves except to shift position or to venture out for the briefest hunting trips. When she does leave, it's never for long, and she's always listening for any sign of danger. She can't afford to take risks, not with you depending on her completely. Your eyes open after a couple of weeks, and suddenly the world expands. It's still small, just the dim interior of the den and your mother's massive form, but it's more than you've ever seen. You start to notice things, the texture of the earth beneath you, the way light filters in through the entrance, the subtle movements your mother makes as she breathes. Everything is new, everything is interesting. Your scales begin to harden, shifting from soft and pliable to something resembling real protection. They overlap like shingles on a roof, each one positioned to deflect attacks from specific angles. Your mother grooms you constantly, using her tongue to clean between the scales and ensure they're developing properly. It's not just hygiene, it's engineering. Every scale has to fit perfectly with its neighbors, or the whole system fails. You start trying to walk, though walk is a generous description of what you're doing. You wobble, You fall. You get your legs tangled together. Your mother watches patiently, occasionally nudging you back onto your feet when you tip over completely. She doesn't intervene unless you're actually in danger. You need to figure this out on your own. Your claws are already impressive, even at this size. They're curved and sharp, designed for digging through the hardest soil and tearing apart the toughest termite mounds. You practice with them constantly, scratching at the walls of the den, learning how much pressure to apply and how to control their movement. These claws will be your primary tools for survival, so you'd better get good at using them. Around a month in, something changes in your mother's behavior. She's more alert, more restless. She ventures out more often and stays away longer each time. You don't understand what's happening, but you can sense the shift in her energy. She's preparing for something, making decisions that will affect both of your futures. Then one day, she doesn't come back as quickly as usual. You wait in the den, pressing yourself against the back wall, listening to every sound from outside. Hours pass. You're hungry, confused, and for the first time, truly alone. Just as panic starts to set in, you hear her returning. But something's different. She's moving faster, with more urgency than usual. She reaches the den and immediately starts making preparations. She's not settling in for another feeding session. She's getting ready to move. Your childhood, such as it was, is about to end. The outside world is calling, and whether you're ready or not, it's time to answer. Your mother nudges you toward the entrance of the den. You resist at first. This is your home, your safe space. Why would you leave? But her insistence is clear, and eventually you have no choice but to follow. You take your first steps into the world beyond the den, and everything changes. The space is overwhelming. Where the den was small and contained, this is vast and endless. The light is brighter, the sounds are louder, and the smells are more complex than anything you've experienced. Your mother moves ahead of you, confident and purposeful, while you stumble along behind, trying to process everything at once. You're not just walking, you're climbing. Your mother leads you up slopes, over fallen logs, through dense vegetation. Your claws, which seemed so impressive in the confines of the den, now prove their real worth. They grip surfaces that would be impossible for other animals to navigate, giving you purchase on vertical rock faces and the smooth bark of trees. The first time you encounter another animal, your instincts kick in immediately. It's just a bird, flying overhead, but your body knows what to do. You curl into a ball instantly, your scales locking together to form an impenetrable sphere. Your mother doesn't even slow down. She knows you'll figure it out and catch up when you're ready. Being rolled up is strange at first. The world disappears, replaced by the warm darkness of your own armored shell. You can hear what's happening outside, but it's muffled and distant. You feel completely safe, but also completely isolated. This is your ultimate defense, but it comes at a cost. When you're balled up, you can't move, can't eat, can't do anything but wait. You learn to trust your mother's judgment about when it's safe to uncurl. She has senses you're still developing, instincts honed by years of survival. When she relaxes, you relax. When she tenses up, you're ready to roll into a ball at a moment's notice. This partnership will keep you alive, but only if you pay attention and learn quickly. Your first real meal outside the den is a revelation. Your mother leads you to a fallen log, ancient and rotting, and begins tearing it apart with her claws. The wood comes away in chunks, revealing the treasure hidden inside, thousands of insects, larvae, and other small creatures. She demonstrates the technique: dig, grab, eat. Then she steps back and lets you try. Your claws aren't as strong as hers yet, but they're strong enough. You tear into the soft wood, sending splinters flying. The insects try to escape, but you're faster than they expect. Your long tongue shoots out, grabbing them before they can reach safety. The taste is incredible, rich, protein-packed, exactly what your growing body needs. This is what you were built for. Your claws, your tongue, your powerful muscles, they all work together to turn you into an incredibly efficient insect hunting machine. You're not a generalist like so many other animals. You have one job, and you're absolutely perfect at it. But perfection comes with limitations. While you're devastating against insects, you're helpless against larger predators. Your armor protects you from teeth and claws, but it can't protect you from everything. A determined predator can still roll you around until you're exhausted, then wait for you to uncurl. Your mother knows this, and she's constantly scanning for threats. Your education continues as you follow your mother through different habitats. Each environment requires different techniques, different strategies. Sandy soil calls for broad, sweeping digs. Rocky ground demands precision and patience. Dense clay requires power and persistence. Your mother teaches you to read the landscape, to understand what each type of terrain can offer. You encounter your first termite mound when you're about 2 months old. It's massive, taller than you are, harder than stone, and crawling with defenders ready to protect their colony. Your mother approaches it with the confidence of an expert, but you hang back, intimidated by the sheer scale of the structure. She begins her assault methodically, using her claws to break through the outer wall. The termites swarm out immediately, trying to repair the damage and drive off the intruder, but your mother ignores them completely. Her thick scales deflect their attacks, and her focus remains entirely on enlarging the opening she's created. Once the breach is wide enough, she inserts her tongue deep into the mound. It's an incredible sight, nearly 2 feet of pink muscle disappearing into the structure, then emerging covered with termites. She does this over and over, each time pulling out dozens of insects. The mound's defenders are powerless to stop her. Then it's your turn. The opening is the perfect size for you, and you don't hesitate. Your tongue might not be as long as your mother's yet, but it's long enough. The termites taste different from the insects in the rotting log, more organized somehow, more purposeful. These aren't random scavengers. They're part of something bigger, something that requires teamwork to obtain. You work alongside your mother for hours, both of you harvesting from the same mound. The termites keep trying to repair the damage, but you're faster than they are. Every time they start to rebuild, one of you breaks through their work and continues feeding. It's methodical, efficient, and incredibly satisfying. As the sun begins to set, your mother finally signals that it's time to move on. The mound is far from empty. It could probably feed you for days, but staying in one place too long is dangerous. Other animals know that pangolins hunt at termite mounds, and some of those animals hunt pangolins. You learn to sleep in different places every night. Sometimes it's under a pile of leaves, sometimes in a shallow burrow your mother digs quickly before dawn. The location doesn't matter as much as the concealment. You need to be invisible during the daylight hours when most of your predators are active. Your mother's vigilance never wavers, even when she's exhausted. She sleeps lightly, always ready to wake up and defend you if necessary. You're still small enough that she can grab you and carry you to safety if something goes wrong. But you're growing fast, and soon you'll be too heavy for that kind of rescue. The bond between you and your mother is unlike anything else in the animal kingdom. She's not just feeding and protecting you, she's passing on knowledge that took her years to acquire. Every technique she shows you, every route she takes, every hiding spot she chooses, represents a lesson learned through trial and error. Some of those lessons probably cost other pangolins their lives. You're 3 months old now, and your independence is growing daily. You can hunt on your own for short periods, though you still prefer to stay close to your mother. Your scales have hardened into real armor, and your claws are becoming genuinely formidable. You're not a helpless baby anymore. You're becoming a pangolin. But with that growth comes new challenges. You're too big to hide in some of the places that used to provide perfect concealment. Your appetite is increasing, which means you need to hunt more frequently and take bigger risks. And most importantly, you're starting to attract attention from predators who might not have bothered with you when you were smaller. Your mother senses these changes, and her behavior shifts accordingly. She's less protective, but more educational. Instead of shielding you from every potential danger, she starts teaching you how to assess and handle threats yourself. This is the beginning of your transition from dependent offspring to independent survivor. The first time you successfully defend yourself without your mother's help, you don't even realize how significant it is. A small predator approaches while you're feeding, and you automatically curl into a ball. It sniffs around you for a few minutes, trying to find a weakness in your armor, then gives up and moves on. When you uncurl, your mother is watching from a distance, but she doesn't come over to check on you. You handled it yourself, and she knows it. Life as a pangolin might be rough, but there's another animal out there that has it way worse. Trust me, it's wild. Check out the video and see for yourself. The lessons come faster now, more complex and demanding. Your mother doesn't just show you where to find food anymore, she teaches you how to read the landscape like a map. That patch of disturbed earth means ants are rebuilding their nest underneath. Those tiny holes in the ground indicate a termite highway running just below the surface. The way certain leaves curl and brown tells you exactly what kind of insects are feeding on the tree roots beneath. You practice these skills obsessively, driven by instincts you don't fully understand yet. Every successful hunt builds your confidence, but every failure reminds you how much you still need to learn. The difference between a good meal and going hungry often comes down to details so small that other animals would never notice them. But you're not other animals, you're a pangolin, and details are everything. Your mother starts leaving you alone for longer periods. At first, these separations are brief, maybe an hour while she scouts ahead or investigates a potential threat. But gradually, they stretch longer. You spend entire afternoons on your own, practicing your hunting techniques and learning to trust your own judgment. It's terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. During one of these solo expeditions, you encounter your first real challenge. You're working on a termite mound, making good progress, when you hear something approaching through the undergrowth. It's big, much bigger than the small predators you've dealt with before. Your first instinct is to curl up, but something stops you. Maybe it's curiosity, maybe it's confidence, but instead of rolling into a defensive ball, you freeze and listen. The sound gets closer, and you can hear heavy breathing, the rustle of something large moving through the vegetation. Your scales prickle with tension, but you stay perfectly still. Then you see it, a wild pig, massive and muscular, with tusks that could tear you apart in seconds. But it's not hunting. It's just passing through, following some pig business that has nothing to do with you. You remain motionless until it disappears completely, then wait another 10 minutes just to be sure. Only then do you allow yourself to breathe normally again. You just survived your first major threat, without help, without rolling up, without panicking. It's a milestone, though you don't recognize it as such. You just go back to hunting termites like nothing happened. When your mother returns, she can tell immediately that something has changed. She doesn't know what, but she senses a new confidence in your movements, a subtle shift in how you carry yourself. You're still her baby, but you're also becoming something else, something independent and capable. The transition is happening whether either of you are ready for it or not. Your appetite becomes enormous. The termite mounds that used to satisfy you for hours now barely fill you up. You need more food, more variety, more hunting grounds. Your mother can't keep up with feeding both of you from the same sources anymore. The math is simple and brutal. There isn't enough food in any single area to support 2 adult pangolins indefinitely. You start ranging further from your mother during your solo hunts. What began as staying within earshot gradually expands to being completely out of range. You're mapping the territory on your own now, finding your own routes, discovering your own food sources. Each successful independent hunt makes the next one easier, building a foundation of knowledge and confidence that no one can take away from you. The first time you sleep alone, it's by accident. You've wandered further than usual while following a particularly rich ant trail, and by the time you realize how far you've traveled, darkness has fallen. You're too tired to make the journey back, and besides, you're not even sure you could find your way in the dark. So you do what pangolins do. You find a hidden spot and settle in for the night. It's different sleeping without your mother's massive presence nearby. Every sound seems amplified. Every shadow could hide danger. But you make it through the night unharmed, and in the morning, you successfully hunt breakfast on your own. By the time you reunite with your mother later that day, something fundamental has changed. You're not just capable of surviving alone, you've actually done it. Your mother senses this shift immediately. She doesn't scold you for staying away overnight. Instead, she seems almost relieved. The constant vigilance required to protect a dependent offspring has been wearing on her for months. She's lost weight, aged visibly, sacrificed her own needs to ensure your survival. Now finally, that burden is beginning to lift. The lessons continue, but they're different now. Instead of teaching you basic survival skills, your mother starts sharing the deeper knowledge. The subtle signs that indicate which termite mounds are worth the effort, how to read weather patterns to predict the best hunting conditions, which routes through the territory are safest during different seasons. This isn't just education anymore. It's the passing of wisdom from one generation to the next. You encounter your first human sign when you're about 5 months old. It's just a footprint in the mud, but your mother's reaction is immediate and intense. She freezes, every muscle in her body going rigid, then quickly leads you away from the area. You don't understand what you've seen, but you understand that it represents danger on a completely different level from anything you've faced before. Humans are different from other predators. They don't just want to eat you, they want to capture you, sell you, turn your scales into medicine, and your meat into exotic cuisine. They have tools, traps, weapons that can overcome your natural defenses. Your armor might stop a leopard's claws, but it won't stop a human's snare. Your mother teaches you to recognize the signs of human presence, the smell of smoke, the sound of vehicles, the geometric patterns of cleared land. These are warnings to retreat immediately, to find the deepest, most inaccessible hiding places you can reach. Humans are the apex predator in your world, and the only winning strategy is complete avoidance. But humans are everywhere now, and avoiding them completely is becoming impossible. Their settlements expand into your territory. Their roads fragment your hunting grounds. Their noise and light pollution disrupt the natural rhythms you depend on. You're learning to navigate a world that's increasingly hostile to your very existence. The pressure is changing your mother's behavior in subtle ways. She's more cautious now, more paranoid. She abandons perfectly good hunting spots at the first sign of human activity. She chooses routes that are longer and more difficult, but offer better concealment. The energy cost of this constant vigilance is enormous, but the alternative is too dangerous to consider. You start to understand that being a pangolin means living in the spaces between human awareness. You exist in the gaps, the overlooked corners, the places too small or too remote for humans to bother with. Your entire species has become a shadow of what it once was, pressed into an ever-shrinking refuge by forces you can't fight or reason with. Your hunting skills continue to improve, but now they're tinged with urgency. Every meal might be your last in this area before human activity forces you to move on. Every termite mound could be destroyed tomorrow by construction or agriculture. You're not just learning to hunt, you're learning to hunt efficiently, to extract maximum nutrition from minimum time and exposure. The bond with your mother remains strong, but it's evolving. She's no longer just your protector and teacher. She's becoming your partner in survival. You hunt together not because you need her guidance, but because two pangolins can cover more ground and watch for more threats than one. You're approaching the point where the relationship will shift from parent-offspring to something more like equals. Your scales are nearly full-grown now, overlapping in perfect geometric patterns that would make a mathematician weep. Each scale is positioned with microscopic precision, creating joints that allow flexibility while maintaining protection. You're a living work of art, engineered by millions of years of evolution to be the perfect insect hunting machine. But perfection comes with a price. Your specialized anatomy makes you incredibly efficient at what you do, but it also makes you vulnerable to changes in your environment. You can't adapt quickly to new food sources or new habitats the way more generalized animals can. You're a master craftsman in a world that increasingly rewards flexibility over expertise. Your mother begins spending more time grooming herself, paying attention to her own needs in ways she hasn't since you were born. She's preparing for something, though you don't understand what. Her behavior becomes less focused on your immediate welfare and more concerned with longer-term considerations. She's thinking about the future, making calculations you're not privy to. The territory you've been exploring together is vast, but it's not infinite. You're starting to encounter the boundaries, places where the habitat changes abruptly, where human development creates impassable barriers, where other pangolins have already established their claims. The world is bigger than you imagined, but it's also more crowded and more contested than you realized. You have your first encounter with another pangolin outside your family when you're about 6 months old. It happens at a termite mound you've been working for several hours. You're deep in concentration, your tongue extended into the colony when you sense movement nearby. You look up to see another pangolin, slightly smaller than your mother, watching you from a distance. The tension is immediate and palpable. This isn't your territory, and you're not welcome here. The other pangolin doesn't attack. Pangolins rarely fight directly, but the message is clear. You're trespassing, and you need to leave. Your mother appears beside you, assessing the situation quickly. Without a word, she leads you away from the mound and out of the area. This encounter teaches you something crucial about pangolin society. It barely exists. Unlike many animals that form complex social structures, pangolins are fundamentally solitary. Territory matters, resources are limited, and sharing is not an option. Every pangolin you meet outside your immediate family is potentially a competitor for the same food sources you depend on. The lesson sinks in over the following weeks as you encounter more territorial markers, scent trails that warn other pangolins to stay away, scratch marks on trees that establish boundaries, the subtle signs of established hunting grounds. You're learning to read a map written in chemical signals and physical evidence, a communication system that operates entirely through absence rather than presence. Your mother's behavior continues to evolve. She's less immediately protective, but more strategically minded. Instead of rushing to shield you from every potential threat, she teaches you to recognize and avoid dangers on your own. She's preparing you for independence, though the process is so gradual that you barely notice it happening. The first time you successfully claim a termite mound for yourself, driving off another pangolin through sheer persistence and determination, you feel something shift inside you. You're not just surviving anymore, you're competing. You're taking your place in the complex web of territorial disputes and resource competition that defines adult pangolin life. Your mother watches this development with what might be pride, though it's hard to tell with pangolins. She doesn't interfere when you assert yourself, doesn't step in to help when you face challenges. You're becoming an adult, and adults have to fight their own battles. But even as your independence grows, the larger world continues to close in around you. The signs of human encroachment multiply daily, new roads cutting through ancient forests, the distant sound of machinery, the chemical smell of agriculture and industry carried on the wind. You're not just learning to be a pangolin, you're learning to be one of the last pangolins, a member of a species racing toward extinction. The pressure to find your own territory becomes overwhelming when you're about 8 months old. Every day spent in your mother's range feels like borrowed time. You're too big to share her resources efficiently, too mature to justify the continued protection. The mathematical reality of pangolin existence is stark. This habitat can support one adult pangolin, not two. Someone has to leave, and it's not going to be her. Your mother starts pushing you toward the edges of her territory, subtle but insistent. When you follow familiar hunting routes, she blocks your path and redirects you elsewhere. When you try to settle into comfortable sleeping spots, she makes it clear they're no longer available. She's not being cruel, she's being practical. This is how pangolin families end, not with violence or abandonment, but with the quiet recognition that survival requires separation. You resist at first, confused by the sudden change in dynamics. This has been your home since birth. These termite mounds have fed you for months. These hiding spots have kept you safe through countless nights. Why should you leave when everything you need is right here? But your mother's insistence is absolute. She's made her decision, and your feelings about it are irrelevant. The first time you venture beyond the boundaries of familiar territory, the world feels impossibly vast and threatening. Every scent is unknown. Every sound could indicate danger. You have no mental map of this area, no knowledge of which routes are safe or which hunting grounds are productive. You're starting over completely, armed with nothing but the skills your mother taught you and instincts you hope are reliable. You spend your first night alone in truly foreign territory, huddled under a fallen log, listening to sounds you can't identify. Something large crashes through the undergrowth nearby, but you can't tell if it's a threat or just another animal going about its business. Every muscle in your body stays tensed until dawn, ready to curl into a defensive ball at the first sign of real danger. Morning brings your first independent hunt in unknown terrain. The termite mounds here are different, taller, harder, built by species you haven't encountered before. Your usual techniques don't work as effectively, and you waste precious energy on failed attempts, but you persist, adapting your approach until you finally break through and access the colony inside. The termites taste slightly different, but they're still protein, still fuel for your growing body. Over the following weeks, you begin mapping this new territory in your mind. You discover which areas flood during heavy rains, which paths offer the best concealment, where the richest concentrations of insect life can be found. It's exhausting work. Every piece of information has to be gathered firsthand, often through trial and error. But gradually, the strange becomes familiar. The threatening becomes manageable. You encounter other pangolins more frequently now, each one a reminder that good territory is scarce and competition is fierce. Most encounters end with one of you backing down and leaving the area, but occasionally you meet another pangolin who refuses to yield. These standoffs are tense affairs, two armored creatures facing each other, neither wanting to fight but both unwilling to concede. Pangolin conflicts are strange, ritualized affairs. You don't slash with your claws or bite with your teeth. Instead, you engage in a kind of armored wrestling match, each trying to knock the other off balance or force them into an uncomfortable position. Your thick scales protect you from serious injury, but these encounters are still exhausting and potentially dangerous. Victory usually goes to whoever has more stamina and determination. You win your first territorial dispute through sheer stubbornness. The other pangolin is larger and probably stronger, but you refuse to back down from a particularly rich ant colony you've discovered. You circle each other for what feels like hours, occasionally clashing in brief, violent exchanges. Neither of you manages to gain a decisive advantage, but eventually your opponent grows tired of the contest and moves on. The ants are yours. That victory changes something fundamental in how you view yourself. You're not just surviving on the margins anymore. You're claiming your place in the world, defending resources that belong to you. The territory you're establishing might not be as rich as your mother's range, but it's yours. You know every termite mound, every ant trail, every safe hiding spot within its boundaries. But territory means responsibility. You have to patrol regularly, maintaining the scent markers that warn other pangolins away. You have to respond to intrusions, even when you're tired or hungry. You have to constantly assess and reassess the productivity of your hunting grounds, abandoning areas that become depleted and incorporating new ones as you discover them. The workload is enormous, but it comes with benefits. You don't have to share your kills with anyone. You don't have to adjust your schedule to accommodate another pangolin's needs. You can hunt when you want, sleep where you want, travel at your own pace. Independence has its costs, but it also has its rewards. Your hunting skills reach new levels of efficiency. Without your mother's guidance, you've been forced to experiment and innovate. You've developed techniques she never taught you, discovered food sources she never showed you. You're becoming not just a competent pangolin, but an exceptional one. Every challenge you've overcome has made you stronger and more capable. The human threat continues to loom over everything you do. Their presence in your territory is increasing, marked by new roads, cleared forest patches, and the constant background noise of machinery. You've learned to time your activities around their patterns, hunting when they're least active, hiding when their vehicles pass through your range. It's a delicate dance of avoidance that requires constant vigilance. You have your first close encounter with humans when you're about a year old. You're working on a termite mound in what you thought was a secure area when you hear voices approaching. There's no time to escape. They're too close, and you're too exposed. Your only option is to curl into a ball and hope they don't notice you among the other debris scattered around the mound. They walk right past you, their conversation incomprehensible but clearly casual. You're just another rock to them, another natural feature of the landscape. They have no idea they've just passed one of the world's most endangered animals, no concept of how rare and precious your existence has become. To them, you're invisible, which in this case saves your life. The encounter leaves you shaken, but also strangely confident. You've been in the presence of your species' greatest threat and emerged undetected. Your camouflage worked, your instincts proved reliable. Maybe coexistence is possible, as long as you remain invisible, as long as you never give them a reason to notice you. Your first year of independence passes in a blur of constant activity. Every day brings new challenges, new lessons, new adaptations to changing conditions. You're no longer the helpless creature that emerged from your mother's den. You're a fully functional adult pangolin, master of your own destiny and guardian of your own territory. But mastery comes with loneliness. Pangolins are not social creatures, but the complete isolation of adult life can be overwhelming. You sometimes catch yourself hoping to encounter another pangolin, even though such meetings usually end in conflict. The desire for connection wars with the practical necessities of territorial defense and resource competition. You begin to understand why your species is struggling. Pangolins are perfectly adapted for a world that no longer exists, a world with vast forests, minimal human presence, and abundant insect life. In the modern world, your specializations have become weaknesses. Your slow reproduction rate, your specific dietary needs, your inability to adapt quickly to environmental changes. All of these traits make you vulnerable to the rapid changes reshaping your habitat. But understanding your species' plight doesn't change your immediate needs. You still have to eat every day, still have to defend your territory, still have to avoid predators and human threats. Survival is a full-time job that doesn't allow for philosophical contemplation of larger issues. You exist in the present moment, responding to immediate challenges with the tools evolution has provided. Your second year begins with a drought that changes everything. The rains fail to come when expected, and the forest begins to dry out. Termite activity decreases dramatically as colonies go dormant to conserve moisture. Ant populations crash as their food sources disappear. The abundance you've grown accustomed to suddenly becomes scarcity. You're forced to expand your hunting range, traveling further each day in search of adequate nutrition. The energy cost of these extended forays begins to outweigh their benefits. You're burning more calories traveling to food sources than you're gaining from the insects you find. The mathematical reality of survival is turning against you. Competition intensifies as every pangolin in the region faces the same challenges. Territorial boundaries become more fluid as desperation overrides normal behavioral patterns. You encounter other pangolins in areas where you've never seen them before, all of you driven by the same urgent need to find enough food to survive. Some don't make it. You discover the remains of a pangolin you've encountered before, its body curled in a final defensive ball that couldn't protect it from starvation. The sight is both sobering and instructive. This could be your fate if you don't adapt quickly to the changing conditions. You begin taking risks you would never have considered before. You hunt during daylight hours when the heat makes you sluggish, but termites are more active. You venture into areas with heavy human presence because they sometimes have richer insect populations. You even consider eating insects you would normally avoid, expanding your diet out of necessity. The drought tests every skill you've developed, every lesson you've learned. Your ability to read the landscape becomes crucial as you search for the few remaining productive hunting grounds. Your knowledge of alternative food sources, accumulated through months of experimentation, suddenly becomes vital for survival. Your physical condition, built up through consistent hunting and exercise, provides the stamina needed for extended foraging trips. Slowly, gradually, you adapt to the new reality. You develop more efficient hunting patterns that minimize energy expenditure. You discover underground water sources that support small pockets of insect life. You learn to recognize the subtle signs that indicate where termites might still be active, even in drought conditions. The drought eventually ends, but its effects linger. Your territory has been permanently altered. Some areas that were once productive may never recover fully. Your body has been stressed in ways that will have long-term consequences. Your understanding of survival has been fundamentally expanded to include scenarios you never imagined facing. But you've survived, and that survival has made you stronger. You're no longer just a competent pangolin. You're a battle-tested veteran of resource scarcity and environmental crisis. The skills you've developed during this challenging period will serve you well in the trials yet to come. The world continues to change around you, usually for the worse. Human development accelerates, fragmenting your habitat into ever smaller patches. Climate patterns become more unpredictable, bringing droughts, floods, and temperature extremes that stress both you and your prey species. The modern world seems designed to eliminate creatures like you, specialists who need stable conditions to thrive. Yet you persist, adapting where possible, enduring where adaptation isn't enough. Every day you survive is a small victory against odds that grow longer with each passing year. You represent something precious and irreplaceable, a living link to an ancient world, a master craftsman in an age of mass production, a survivor in an era of extinction. Your territory has become your fortress, your hunting grounds, your lifeline, your accumulated knowledge, your most valuable possession. You're a pangolin in full, everything your species can be, everything evolution intended you to become. Whether that will be enough to ensure your survival in the world that's coming remains to be seen. Your territory stabilizes as the seasons cycle through their familiar patterns, but something deeper is shifting inside you. The isolation that once felt natural now carries a different weight. You catch yourself pausing during hunts, listening not just for danger, but for the sound of another pangolin moving through the undergrowth. It never comes, but the hoping doesn't stop. The urge builds slowly, like pressure behind your scales. Your body is changing in ways you don't fully understand, chemical signals flooding your system, instincts awakening that have been dormant since birth. The scent markers you leave around your territory take on new properties, carrying messages you've never sent before. You're advertising something without knowing what, calling for something you've never experienced. When it finally hits you, the realization is overwhelming. You need to find a mate. The drive consumes everything else. Hunting becomes secondary. Territorial defense turns into mere routine. Your entire existence narrows to a single purpose that evolution has embedded so deeply in your DNA that resistance is impossible. This isn't choice. It's biological imperative. You abandon the careful boundaries you've maintained for months and venture into territories you've never explored. The risks are enormous. Every step takes you further from familiar ground, closer to pangolins who might view you as an intruder rather than a potential partner. But the compulsion drives you forward despite the dangers. Your first encounter with a potential mate goes disastrously wrong. You approach another pangolin working at an ant colony, trying to signal your intentions through body language you're improvising as you go. The response is immediate and violent, claws and scales clashing as your would-be partner makes it clear that your presence is unwelcome. You retreat, confused and frustrated, nursing scratches that will take days to heal. The rejection stings worse than the physical wounds. You don't understand what went wrong, why your approach failed so completely. Pangolin courtship isn't something your mother taught you. It's knowledge you're supposed to acquire through instinct and trial, mostly trial. Each failure teaches you something, but the lessons come at a cost. You try again with another pangolin, this time approaching more cautiously. You hang back, observing their behavior patterns, trying to read signals you're not sure you understand. When you finally make contact, the interaction is less violent, but no more successful. They tolerate your presence briefly, then move away without acknowledgement. Another rejection, another lesson in the complexity of pangolin romance. Days pass in this frustrating cycle of searching and rejection. Your hunting suffers as you spend more time traveling and less time focused on finding food. Your territory begins to feel abandoned, though you still return to it each night. The balance of your carefully constructed life is falling apart under the pressure of biological need. Then, when you're beginning to think you'll never succeed, something changes. You encounter a pangolin who doesn't immediately flee or attack when you approach. Instead, they pause, assessing you with what might be curiosity rather than hostility. The interaction is brief and tentative, but it's different from all the others. There's a possibility here that didn't exist before. You don't push too hard, don't try to force an outcome. Instead, you mirror their cautious energy, staying close enough to maintain contact, but far enough away to avoid triggering defensive responses. It's a delicate dance that requires patience you didn't know you possessed. Hours pass in this careful choreography of approach and withdrawal. Gradually, impossibly, the barriers begin to lower. Your potential mate allows you to come closer, even feeds in the same area without showing signs of stress. The scent markers they leave carry undertones that speak to something deep in your nervous system, chemical messages that bypass rational thought and trigger responses you didn't know you were capable of. The courtship process is unlike anything you've experienced. It's not violent like territorial disputes or straightforward like hunting. Instead, it's a complex negotiation carried out through subtle signals and careful positioning. You learn to read the angle of their head, the tension in their posture, the rhythm of their movements. Every gesture carries meaning in a language you're learning as you speak it. When the moment finally arrives, it's both anticlimactic and overwhelming. The actual mating is brief and businesslike, lacking the drama you might have expected. But the significance is profound. You've successfully reproduced, passing your genes to the next generation and fulfilling the most basic requirement of evolutionary success. You're no longer just a survivor, you're an ancestor. The aftermath brings some unexpected emotions. Your mate shows no interest in prolonged contact, returning to their own territory and their own concerns, as if nothing significant has happened. You're alone again, but the loneliness feels different now. You've connected with another of your kind, however briefly, and that connection has changed something fundamental about your place in the world. Your routine returns to normal, but the experience has altered your perspective on everything. Territory defense feels less urgent when you know there are other pangolins out there, potential partners for future breeding seasons. Hunting takes on new significance as you realize you're not just feeding yourself, but maintaining the genetic line that might continue through offspring you'll never meet. The seasonal patterns continue their ancient rhythm, but you're more aware of them now. You notice the subtle changes that signal breeding season's approach, the gradual shifts in behavior and chemistry that will eventually drive you to seek another mate. This knowledge transforms your understanding of time from a series of immediate challenges to a longer cycle of biological imperatives. Your territory expands as you incorporate lessons learned during your mate-seeking journey. You've discovered new hunting grounds, alternative routes through dangerous areas, hiding spots that proved useful during your extended travels. The knowledge makes you more versatile and better prepared for future challenges, but it also makes you aware of how much you still don't know. Other pangolins become less abstract threats and more like potential connections. When you encounter territorial markers now, you read them differently, not just as warnings to stay away, but as information about the individuals who left them. You're building a mental map of the pangolin community in your region, understanding the complex web of relationships and territories that define your species' social structure. The human threat continues to evolve in ways that require constant adaptation. New developments appear regularly: roads that cut through established territories, buildings that eliminate hunting grounds, noise and light that disrupt natural behavior patterns. Each change forces you to adjust your routines, find new solutions to old problems, develop skills your ancestors never needed. You learn to exploit human activity when possible, hunting around their structures when insects are attracted to artificial lights, using their roads as efficient travel routes during low traffic periods. It's a dangerous game that requires precise timing and constant vigilance, but the rewards can be substantial. Human settlements concentrate insect life in ways that natural habitats sometimes can't match. Your third year brings new challenges as climate patterns shift in unprecedented ways. The rains come at the wrong times, temperatures fluctuate outside normal ranges, and seasonal cues that have guided pangolin behavior for millions of years become unreliable. You're forced to develop new strategies for predicting food availability and planning your activities. The insect populations you depend on struggle to adapt to these changing conditions. Some species disappear entirely from areas where they were once abundant. Others appear in unexpected places, following new patterns of temperature and moisture that you have to learn to interpret. Your diet becomes more varied by necessity as familiar food sources become scarce. Competition intensifies as all the pangolins in your region face the same environmental pressures, and territorial boundaries become more contested as good hunting grounds become rarer. You find yourself defending your range more frequently, engaging in conflicts that drain energy you can barely afford to lose. The mathematics of survival are shifting against your species, yet you adapt, as pangolins have always adapted. Your intelligence and flexibility, often overlooked in favor of your more obvious physical specializations, prove crucial for navigating these new challenges. You develop innovative hunting techniques, discover alternative food sources, find creative solutions to problems that would stump less adaptable animals. Your success during this difficult period establishes you as one of the dominant pangolins in your region. Other individuals learn to avoid direct confrontation with you, recognizing through repeated encounters that you're not an opponent to be underestimated. Your reputation spreads through the complex communication networks that connect pangolin territories across the landscape. This dominance comes with responsibilities. Younger pangolins occasionally approach your territory, not to challenge you, but to observe and learn. You don't actively teach them. Pangolins don't work that way. But your presence provides an example of successful adaptation to changing conditions. In your own way, you're contributing to your species' accumulated knowledge. Your hunting skills reach levels that would seem impossible to your younger self. You can assess a termite mound's productivity from external signs alone, predict ant activity Based on subtle environmental cues, locate underground colonies through techniques that border on the supernatural. Every sense has been honed to perfection through years of constant use and refinement. The efficiency of your hunting allows you to spend less time foraging and more time on other activities. You patrol your territory more thoroughly, maintaining scent markers with scientific precision. You explore areas beyond your boundaries, gathering intelligence about changing conditions and potential opportunities. You even rest more, conserving energy for the challenges you know are coming. Your body shows the wear of 3 hard years in the wild. Scars mark places where encounters went wrong, where predators got closer than they should have, where territorial disputes turned violent. Your scales bear the patina of constant use, their edges worn smooth by contact with countless surfaces. You're no longer the pristine creature that left your mother's care. You're a veteran marked by survival, but experience has made you formidable in ways that youth never could. You move through your territory with the confidence of complete familiarity, every path mapped in your memory, every hiding spot tested under pressure. When threats appear, your responses are instant and precise. You've faced everything your environment can throw at you and emerged victorious. The breeding urge returns with the changing seasons, but it's different this time. You approach the search for mates with the systematic efficiency you've developed in other areas of your life. You know which territories are most likely to hold compatible partners, which routes offer the best combination of efficiency and safety, which times of day provide optimal conditions for courtship attempts. Your success rate improves dramatically. The confidence and competence you've developed make you more attractive to potential mates, while your experience with courtship rituals allows you to navigate the complex social dynamics more effectively. You manage to mate multiple times during the breeding season, maximizing your genetic contribution to the next generation. Each successful mating reinforces your position in the pangolin hierarchy. You're not just surviving anymore, you're thriving, passing on genes that have proven their worth through the crucible of environmental challenge and competitive pressure. Your offspring will carry the genetic legacy of a pangolin who mastered the art of survival in an increasingly hostile world, but success brings its own pressures. Your energy reserves, depleted by the constant demands of territorial defense, hunting, and reproduction, begin to show signs of strain. The relentless pace of adult pangolin life is taking its toll, aging your body faster than the calendar would suggest. You're still strong, still capable, but the margins for error are shrinking. Recovery takes longer after each challenge. Wounds heal more slowly, energy returns less completely after periods of intense activity. Your body is sending subtle signals that the peak years of physical capability are behind you, that the future will require different strategies than the ones that brought you to this point. You begin to shift your approach from pure physical dominance to more sophisticated tactics. Instead of meeting every challenge head-on, you learn to choose your battles more carefully. Your intelligence, always present but often overshadowed by physical capabilities, becomes a more prominent tool in your survival arsenal. The wisdom you've accumulated becomes increasingly valuable as environmental conditions continue to deteriorate. Your knowledge of alternative food sources proves crucial during periods when primary hunting grounds become unproductive. Your understanding of safe routes allows you to avoid areas where human activity has made travel dangerous. Younger pangolins begin to recognize your status, not through direct confrontation, but through observation of your success. Your territory remains productive when others fail. Your hunting grounds stay active when neighboring areas become depleted. You've become a landmark in the pangolin community, a reference point for measuring success and adaptation. Your fourth year brings the first serious challenge to your physical dominance. A younger pangolin, strong and aggressive, begins testing your territorial boundaries with increasing boldness. The confrontations start small but escalate as they sense potential weakness in your responses. You're facing the inevitable challenge that comes to every aging dominant animal. The conflict builds over weeks, a series of escalating encounters that drain energy from both participants. Your experience gives you tactical advantages, but their youth provides raw physical power that becomes harder to match as the disputes continue. The mathematics of aging are working against you, turning every confrontation into a calculated risk. The decisive battle comes at one of your most productive termite mounds. Your challenger arrives while you're hunting, clearly intending to claim the site through force. There's no avoiding the confrontation this time. Too much is at stake, and retreat would signal the beginning of the end for your territorial control. The fight is brutal and exhausting. Your opponent's strength is formidable, but your experience shows in every move. You know how to conserve energy, how to use leverage instead of pure force, how to turn their aggression against them. The battle rages for what feels like hours, neither participant able to gain a decisive advantage. When the end comes, it's not through knockout, but through endurance. Your challenger, despite their youth and strength, lacks the stamina that comes from years of survival pressure. They begin to tire first, their movements becoming less precise, their attacks less coordinated. You press the advantage ruthlessly, driving them back until they finally concede and retreat. Victory brings mixed emotions. You've maintained your position and proven that experience can triumph over youth. But the cost was enormous. Your body aches in ways it never has before, and recovery will take longer than you'd like to admit. More concerning, you know this was probably your last such victory. The next challenge might have a different outcome, but for now, your territory remains yours. Your hunting grounds stay productive, and your status in the pangolin hierarchy is secure. You've bought time to adapt to the realities of aging, to develop strategies that rely more on wisdom than on physical prowess. The transition from young warrior to elder statesman has begun, whether you're ready for it or not. Your hunting techniques continue to evolve, becoming more efficient and less physically demanding. You learn to work smarter rather than harder, using knowledge accumulated over years to maximize results while minimizing energy expenditure. The brute force approaches of your youth give way to surgical precision born of deep understanding. The territory you've held for years becomes even more precious as you realize how difficult it would be to establish a new one at your age. Every termite mound, every ant colony, every safe hiding spot represents irreplaceable value that took years to discover and develop. Losing this territory would mean starting over in circumstances that would probably prove fatal. Your relationship with the human threat evolves as their presence becomes impossible to ignore completely. You learn to coexist in ways that would have been unthinkable in your youth, timing your activities around their patterns, exploiting opportunities their presence creates while avoiding the dangers they represent. It's an uneasy balance that requires constant adjustment. The seasonal cycles that have governed your life since birth begin to carry different meanings as you age. Each breeding season might be your last chance to pass on genes that have proven their worth. Each winter represents a survival challenge that will be harder to meet than the one before. Time, once an endless resource, becomes something to be hoarded and spent carefully. Yet there's a strange peace in this awareness of mortality. The desperate urgency of youth, the constant pressure to establish dominance and claim territory, gradually gives way to a more measured approach to survival. You've proven everything you needed to prove, accomplished everything a pangolin can accomplish. What remains is the simple business of living as long and as well as possible. Your legacy begins to take shape in ways you don't fully recognize. The territory you've maintained serves as a refuge for the insect populations that other pangolins depend on. The knowledge you've accumulated influences the behavior of younger individuals who observe your success. Your genetic contribution to the next generation carries forward adaptations that helped you survive in an increasingly hostile world. The story of your life becomes part of the larger story of your species, a tale of adaptation and persistence in the face of overwhelming challenges. You represent everything a pangolin can be in the modern world: intelligent, adaptable, resilient, and ultimately successful, despite odds that would crush less specialized creatures. But the world continues to change, and even your hard-won adaptations may not be enough for what's coming. The pressures that shaped your life are intensifying for the next generation, creating challenges that may exceed even pangolin ingenuity to overcome. Your survival is a victory, but it may be one of the last your species achieves. For now, though, you continue the ancient work of being a pangolin. You hunt with skill honed by years of practice, defend territory earned through countless battles, and navigate a hostile world with the wisdom that comes from surviving everything it can throw at you. Each day you persist is another small victory against extinction, another moment of defiance in the face of overwhelming odds. The seasons blur together now, marked less by dramatic changes and more by the subtle shifts in your body's rhythms. Your 5th year arrives with an awareness that time moves differently when you've seen enough cycles to recognize their patterns. The urgency that once drove every decision has evolved into something more measured, more deliberate. You're no longer racing against time, you're negotiating with it. Your hunting grounds have become extensions of your own body, so familiar that you navigate them in complete darkness without hesitation. Every termite mound tells a story you can read like text: which colonies are thriving, which are struggling, when they'll be most vulnerable to your attacks. The landscape speaks to you in a language that took years to learn, but now flows as naturally as breathing. A young pangolin appears at the edge of your territory one morning, small and obviously inexperienced. They're not challenging you, they're too young for that, but they're watching, learning from your movements. You ignore them at first, but their persistence eventually catches your attention. They mirror your hunting techniques from a safe distance, copying your approach to termite mounds with clumsy enthusiasm. You don't teach them directly, that's not how pangolins work, but you don't drive them away either. Something about their determination resonates with memories of your own desperate early days. They follow you for weeks, maintaining respectful distance while absorbing every lesson your behavior offers. Eventually, they disappear as suddenly as they arrived, presumably to establish their own territory somewhere else. The encounter leaves you oddly satisfied. You've contributed to another pangolin's education without compromising your own resources. It's as close to mentorship as your species gets, a passing of knowledge that happens through observation rather than instruction. The young pangolin carried away techniques that took you months to develop, compressed into weeks of careful watching. Your body continues its gradual decline, each year adding new limitations to consider. Your claws, once razor-sharp, now require more maintenance to stay effective. Your scales, still formidable armor, bear the accumulated damage of countless encounters. Your muscles, though still powerful, recover more slowly from periods of intense activity, age is winning its patient war against your physical capabilities. But experience compensates for what strength can no longer provide. You've learned to read weather patterns with supernatural accuracy, predicting insect activity days in advance. Your knowledge of alternative food sources means you rarely go hungry, even when primary hunting grounds become unproductive. Your understanding of predator behavior allows you to avoid confrontations that younger pangolins might stumble into blindly. The human presence in your territory reaches a tipping point during your 6th year. A new road cuts directly through one of your most productive hunting areas, destroying ant colonies that took decades to establish. The constant traffic makes the entire region too dangerous for normal foraging. You're forced to abandon territory you've held since independence, retreating to less optimal areas that can barely support your needs. The loss hits harder than any physical injury you've sustained. This wasn't defeat in combat or failure to adapt. This was simple erasure, your habitat destroyed by forces that don't even acknowledge your existence. The mathematical reality is brutal. There are fewer places for pangolins to live, and the remaining areas are increasingly fragmented and inadequate. You adapt because adaptation is what pangolins do, but the margins for survival are shrinking with each passing season. Every lost hunting ground forces the remaining pangolins into closer proximity, intensifying competition for resources that were already stretched thin. The carrying capacity of your environment is dropping faster than your species can adjust to accommodate the change. Your hunting schedule shifts to accommodate the new reality. You forage during times when human activity is minimal, often in conditions that are far from optimal. Dawn and dusk become your primary active periods, the narrow windows when you can move through your territory without encountering vehicles or construction equipment. It's a precarious existence that leaves little room for error. The breeding seasons become more challenging as potential mates become harder to find. The fragmentation of pangolin territories means that individuals are more isolated than ever, separated by barriers that didn't exist in previous generations. The energy cost of seeking mates increases dramatically as you're forced to travel further and take greater risks to make contact with other pangolins. When you do manage to mate, the encounters carry additional weight. Each successful reproduction might be among the last for your species in this region. The genetic diversity of the local population is shrinking as pangolins disappear, making every breeding event crucial for maintaining the viability of future generations. You're not just perpetuating your own lineage, you're helping preserve the species itself. Your 7th year brings an unexpected encounter that changes your perspective on survival. While hunting near the periphery of your territory, you discover another pangolin in distress. They're trapped in a snare, the kind humans use to capture animals for the illegal wildlife trade. The wire has cut deep into their leg, and they're weakening from blood loss and dehydration. Your first instinct is to avoid the situation entirely. Helping would mean exposing yourself to the same trap, risking your own survival for an individual you don't know. Pangolin social structure doesn't include rescue behaviors. Each individual is responsible for their own survival. But something about the trapped pangolin's condition triggers responses you didn't know you possessed. You approach cautiously, assessing the trap mechanism while staying alert for human presence. The snare is sophisticated, designed to tighten when the victim struggles. The trapped pangolin has exhausted themselves trying to escape, making their situation worse with each desperate attempt. They're beyond self-rescue, doomed without intervention. Working carefully with your claws, You manage to loosen the wire enough for the trapped pangolin to extract their injured leg. They don't thank you. Pangolins don't have mechanisms for gratitude, but they don't flee immediately either. Instead, they rest nearby while you keep watch, allowing their strength to return before attempting to travel. The rescue costs you a full day of hunting and exposes you to risks you normally avoid. But watching the freed pangolin disappear into the forest provides satisfaction that transcends simple survival calculations. You've acted outside the normal parameters of pangolin behavior, demonstrating capacities your species rarely has occasion to display. The incident haunts your thoughts for days afterward. You keep wondering what drove you to take such risks for another individual, what evolutionary purpose such behavior could serve. Perhaps it represents some vestige of the social bonds that connected you to your mother, dormant instincts awakened by extreme circumstances. Or maybe it's something else entirely, a recognition that your species' survival depends on each individual's continued existence. Your hunting efficiency reaches new heights as you compensate for the reduced territory and increased competition. Every technique has been refined through years of practice, every movement calculated for maximum effectiveness. You've become a perfect hunting machine, extracting maximum nutrition from minimum time and energy expenditure. It's a masterpiece of adaptation that represents the pinnacle of pangolin evolution. But perfection in a degraded environment can only accomplish so much. The insect populations you depend on are under pressure from habitat destruction, pesticide use, and climate change. Even your superior hunting skills can't overcome the simple reality of declining prey availability. You're becoming increasingly efficient at harvesting a resource that's disappearing. Your 8th year brings the first signs that your reproductive capacity may be declining. The seasonal urges that once drove you to seek mates with desperate intensity now feel muted, less compelling. Your body's chemistry is shifting in ways that suggest your breeding years might be coming to an end. The biological imperative that shaped so much of your adult life is beginning to fade. The realization brings unexpected relief along with the obvious sadness. The energy you once devoted to mate seeking can now be redirected toward pure survival, simplifying your existence in ways that might actually extend your lifespan. Without the risks and energy costs of reproduction, you can focus entirely on the business of staying alive in an increasingly hostile world. Your territory contracts as you abandon the less productive areas and concentrate on defending the core regions that still provide adequate resources. It's a strategic retreat that conserves energy while maintaining access to your most reliable food sources. The smaller territory is easier to patrol and defend, reducing the physical demands on your aging body. The contraction doesn't go unnoticed by other pangolins in the area. Younger individuals begin testing the boundaries of your reduced territory, probing for weaknesses that might allow them to claim portions of your hunting grounds. Most of these challenges are half-hearted affairs that you can discourage without serious confrontation, but some require more definitive responses. You develop new strategies for territorial defense that rely more on psychological warfare than physical combat. Your reputation as a formidable opponent often precedes you, allowing you to discourage challengers through displays of confidence rather than actual fighting. The youngsters testing your boundaries usually lack the experience to distinguish between real threats and calculated bluffs. When combat becomes unavoidable, you fight with the cunning that comes from decades of survival. You choose battlegrounds that favor your experience over their strength, use their aggression against them, and end conflicts as quickly as possible to minimize energy expenditure. Victory still comes regularly, but each one costs more than the last. Your relationship with the changing environment becomes increasingly complex as human development accelerates around your territory. You learn to exploit some aspects of their presence while avoiding others, using artificial lights to hunt insects attracted to illumination while staying clear of areas with heavy machinery or foot traffic. It's a delicate balance that requires constant adjustment. The night sounds that once provided comfort now carry undertones of menace. The distant hum of generators, the rumble of late-night traffic, the mechanical noises of construction equipment preparing for another day of habitat destruction. Your world is being invaded by sounds that have no place in the ancient rhythms of pangolin existence, acoustic pollution that disrupts the natural cues you've relied on for survival. You adapt your communication patterns to accommodate the increased background noise, adjusting the frequency and intensity of your scent markings to ensure they remain detectable despite the sensory chaos of human presence. Your territorial boundaries become more clearly defined as you compensate for the reduced effectiveness of subtle chemical signals in a contaminated environment. The air itself carries new odors that interfere with your ability to read the landscape. Exhaust fumes mask the scent trails that reveal ant colonies. Industrial chemicals overwhelm the pheromones that indicate termite activity. Your nose, once a precision instrument for navigating the world, now struggles to filter useful information from the chemical noise of civilization. Your 9th year opens with the discovery that one of your most reliable termite mounds has been destroyed by construction equipment. The colony that provided consistent nutrition for 3 years is gone, erased in a single morning by machines that never knew it existed. The loss forces you to reorganize your entire hunting strategy, seeking replacement food sources in areas you've never fully explored. The search reveals how thoroughly your environment has been transformed. Areas that once teemed with insect life now support only scattered populations struggling to survive in degraded habitats. The mathematical foundation of pangolin existence, the equations that balances energy expenditure against caloric intake, is shifting in ways that make long-term survival increasingly problematic. You're forced to expand your diet beyond the termites and ants that constitute your preferred nutrition. Beetle larvae, moth caterpillars, even adult insects that you would normally ignore become necessary supplements to your increasingly precarious food supply. The expansion requires learning new hunting techniques and accepting lower quality nutrition that affects your energy levels and overall health. Your body weight begins to decline as the combination of reduced food availability and increased foraging effort takes its toll. The fat reserves that once provided insurance against lean periods are gradually consumed without being fully replenished. Your scales, still formidable armor, begin to feel loose as the flesh beneath them diminishes. The weight loss affects your mobility in ways both positive and negative. You're faster and more agile than you've been in years, able to navigate tight spaces and climb structures that would have been challenging at full weight. But you're also weaker, less able to break through hardened termite mound walls or excavate deeply buried ant colonies. Every advantage comes with corresponding disadvantages. Your hunting grounds continue to shrink as development claims more territory each month. Roads fragment the remaining habitat into isolated patches too small to support viable pangolin populations. Shopping centers and industrial complexes replace the forests and grasslands where your prey species once thrived. The world is being systematically restructured in ways that eliminate the niches your species requires for survival. The psychological impact of this constant loss begins to affect your behavior in subtle ways. You become more cautious, more paranoid about venturing into areas where human activity is heavy. Your movements become more furtive, more focused on concealment than on efficiency. The confident swagger that once characterized your territorial patrols gives way to the nervous alertness of a creature that knows it doesn't belong in the world it inhabits. Sleep becomes more difficult as the noise and light pollution from nearby development disrupts your natural rhythms. The darkness that once provided complete concealment is now punctuated by security lights, street lamps, and the constant glow of human activity. Your day-night cycle evolved over millions of years to synchronize with natural light patterns, struggles to adapt to the artificial illumination of the modern world. Your 10th year arrives with the sobering realization that you may be among the last pangolins in your region. The scent markers that once indicated a thriving population have largely disappeared, replaced by the chemical signatures of human development. The complex network of territorial boundaries that once defined pangolin society has collapsed as the individuals who maintained them have vanished or died. The silence is perhaps the most unsettling aspect of your current existence. Where you once moved through a landscape rich with the subtle communications of your species, you now navigate a world that feels empty of pangolin presence. The absence of competition should make survival easier, but instead it creates an existential loneliness that weighs on your consciousness in ways you don't fully understand. You continue the ancient work of being a pangolin because that's what you are, what evolution designed you to be. You hunt with skills perfected over a decade of constant practice, defend territory that grows smaller each year, and maintain routines that connect you to millions of years of pangolin heritage. Each day you survive is an act of defiance against forces that seem determined to erase your species from existence. Your scales, worn smooth by a decade of survival, still provide formidable protection against the physical threats you face. But they can't protect you from habitat destruction, chemical pollution, or the simple mathematics of a species pushed beyond the carrying capacity of its degraded environment. You're armored against the predators of the past, but vulnerable to the challenges of the present. The termite mounds you've hunted for years begin to show signs of long-term decline as the insect populations struggle with their own environmental pressures. Colonies that once supported thousands of individuals now maintain only small, struggling communities. The abundance that sustained pangolins for evolutionary ages is disappearing faster than your species can adapt to accommodate the change. Your hunting techniques continue to evolve as you learn to extract maximum nutrition from declining resources. You develop new methods for locating the smallest ant colonies, techniques for accessing termite populations that other predators can't reach, strategies for harvesting insects that previous generations of pangolins never needed to consider. Innovation born of desperation, adaptation driven by the simple imperative to survive. But innovation has its limits, and even the most sophisticated hunting techniques can't overcome the fundamental problem of disappearing prey. The insects you depend on are themselves victims of the same forces that threaten your existence. Habitat destruction, pesticide use, and climate change create cascading effects that ripple through the entire ecosystem, eliminating species faster than evolution can replace them. Your territory becomes a fortress under siege, defended against increasingly overwhelming odds. Each season brings new challenges that test the limits of your adaptability. Droughts last longer and hit harder, disrupting insect life cycles and reducing prey availability. Floods arrive with unprecedented intensity, washing away colonies that took years to establish. The weather patterns that once provided predictable seasonal rhythms now deliver chaos that defies traditional survival strategies. You persist because persistence is what pangolins do, what your species has always done in the face of adversity. But you're beginning to understand that persistence alone may not be enough to overcome the unprecedented challenges of the modern world. The forces reshaping your environment operate on scales and timelines that exceed your species' capacity for adaptation. Your 11th year opens with the discovery that you may be the last pangolin in your entire region. The absence of territorial markers, the silence where pangolin communications once filled the night air, the complete lack of encounters with others of your kind, all point to a devastating conclusion. You've survived long enough to witness the effective extinction of your local population. The realization doesn't change your daily routine. You still hunt, still patrol your territory, still maintain the behaviors that define pangolin existence. But it adds a weight to every action, a significance that transforms simple survival into something approaching heroism. You're not just living, you're preserving a way of life that may disappear when you do. Your legacy lives in the territory you've maintained, the insect populations you've managed through careful harvesting, the knowledge you've accumulated through years of adaptation and survival. Future pangolins, if any manage to reach this area, will benefit from the ecological relationships you've preserved and the survival strategies you've perfected. Your existence has prepared the ground for others, even if those others may never come. The ancient rhythms of pangolin life continue through your aging body, connecting you to evolutionary heritage that stretches back millions of years. You carry within yourself the accumulated wisdom of countless generations, the genetic memory of survival strategies tested across geological ages. You are a living repository of pangolin knowledge, perhaps the last such repository in your corner of the world. Your scales bear the patina of a life fully lived, scarred by encounters with predators, worn smooth by passage through countless burrows, marked by the accumulated evidence of survival in an increasingly hostile world. Each mark tells a story of challenge overcome, danger survived, adaptation achieved. You are a masterpiece of evolutionary engineering, honed to perfection through the crucible of natural selection. But even masterpieces are vulnerable to forces beyond their design parameters. Your perfection as a pangolin, your specialized anatomy, your specific dietary requirements, your particular habitat needs, becomes a liability in a world transformed by human activity. The very traits that made your species successful for millions of years now contribute to your vulnerability in the modern era. Your story continues, one day at a time, one hunt at a time, one small victory at a time, against odds that grow longer with each passing season. You represent something irreplaceable and precious, a living connection to an ancient world, a survivor in an age of extinction, a testament to the power of adaptation and the limits of resilience. Whether your story will have a sequel remains to be seen. The hunting becomes more desperate as your 12th year unfolds. What once required an hour of methodical work now takes entire days to accomplish. The termite mounds that supported you for years are failing, their colonies reduced to struggling remnants that barely justify the energy cost of excavation. You find yourself digging deeper, working harder, for meals that leave you hungrier than when you started. Your claws, dulled by constant use against increasingly resistant surfaces, struggle with tasks that were once effortless. The precision strikes that once opened termite highways now require multiple attempts, wasting precious energy and alerting prey to your presence. Your tongue, still long and effective, finds fewer targets worth the effort of deployment. The mathematics of survival are turning decisively against you, sleep becomes your enemy and your refuge simultaneously. Your body craves rest to recover from the increased demands of foraging, but lying still for too long leaves you stiff and slow to respond to threats. You develop a pattern of brief naps scattered throughout your active periods, never fully resting, but never completely exhausted. It's a compromise that satisfies neither your need for recovery nor your requirement for vigilance. The scent markers you've maintained for years begin to fade as you lack the energy to refresh them regularly. Your territorial boundaries become vague suggestions rather than firm declarations, but it doesn't matter anymore. There are no other pangolins left to respect or challenge those boundaries. You're maintaining the fiction of territory in a world where territory has lost its meaning. Your memory becomes both sharper and more unreliable as age takes its toll on your cognitive functions. You can recall with perfect clarity the location of termite mounds that were destroyed years ago, but struggle to remember whether you've already hunted in a particular area today. The mental map that once guided your movements with GPS-like precision now contains gaps and contradictions that sometimes lead you in circles. The weather patterns continue their relentless shift toward extremes that your species never evolved to handle. Summer temperatures reach levels that force you to remain inactive during peak daylight hours, reducing your hunting time to narrow windows of tolerable conditions. Winter cold penetrates deeper than your scales can effectively insulate against, sapping energy reserves you can barely afford to lose. Your digestive system, stressed by years of processing increasingly poor quality food, begins to show signs of failure. Insects that would have provided excellent nutrition in your youth now pass through your system only partially absorbed, their proteins and fats wasted due to your body's declining ability to extract nutrients efficiently. You're eating more but gaining less from each meal. The human development around your territory reaches saturation levels that make normal movement nearly impossible during daylight hours. Construction equipment operates around the clock, filling the air with noise and dust that disrupts every aspect of your natural behavior. The few remaining patches of viable habitat are separated by barriers of concrete and steel that you lack the strength to navigate safely. Your 13th year arrives not with celebration, but with the quiet recognition that time is running out. Your body weight has dropped to levels that would have triggered alarm responses in your younger self. Your movements have slowed to a careful shuffle that conserves energy but leaves you vulnerable to threats you could once easily escape. The magnificent hunting machine you once were is breaking down system by system, yet you continue because continuing is what you do, what you've always done. Each morning you wake and assess your condition, catalog your aches and limitations, then venture out to find food because the alternative is surrender. Your hunting grounds may be degraded, your prey scarce, your body failing, but you're still alive, still functional, still a pangolin doing pangolin things in a world that no longer supports pangolins. The insects you manage to catch taste different now, their flavors muted by your declining sense of taste or altered by the chemical contamination that pervades the environment. What once provided the rich, satisfying sustenance that fueled your adventures now offers only basic calories that keep your systems functioning at minimal levels. Food has become medicine, consumed for necessity rather than pleasure. Your scales, though still formidable in appearance, have lost some of their protective efficiency. Years of wear have created microscopic gaps where debris can lodge and bacteria can establish footholds. You spend more time grooming, using precious energy to maintain your armor's integrity, but the maintenance becomes less effective with each passing month. Your natural defenses are slowly failing. The loneliness reaches levels that affect your behavior in ways you don't fully understand. You find yourself making sounds you haven't produced since childhood, calls that once summoned your mother but now echo unanswered through empty forests. Sometimes you pause in your hunting to listen for responses that never come, hoping against experience that another pangolin might have survived in some overlooked corner of the territory. Your sleep patterns fragment further as anxiety about survival interrupts your rest cycles. You wake frequently to check your surroundings, assess potential threats, verify that your hiding spots remain secure. The constant vigilance exhausts you mentally and physically, creating a feedback loop where poor sleep leads to worse decision-making, which leads to greater risks, which leads to more anxiety and worse sleep. The termite mounds you've relied on for years show clear signs of terminal decline. Colonies that once numbered in the hundreds of thousands now support only small communities that huddle in the deepest chambers, avoiding the surface where your predation once kept their numbers in check. The ecosystem relationships that sustained both predator and prey for millions of years are collapsing as environmental pressures overwhelm natural resilience. Your hunting efficiency plummets as your body struggles to perform the complex movements required for successful foraging. What once flowed like a dance now feels like a battle against your own limitations. Your claws miss their targets. Your tongue fails to reach colonies you can detect but not access. Your strength proves inadequate for breaking through barriers that would have yielded easily in previous years. The drought that begins in your 13th year proves more devastating than any you've experienced. The already scarce insect populations crash to levels that make survival nearly impossible. You're forced to expand your search radius to distances that exhaust you before you can return home, creating dangerous situations where you're too tired to defend yourself or find adequate shelter. Your body begins cannibalizing its own tissues to maintain basic functions. Muscle mass disappears first, reducing your strength and agility. Fat reserves vanish entirely, leaving you without the energy stores that once provided insurance against lean periods. Even your scales begin to thin as your body reallocates resources from protection to basic metabolic needs. You're literally consuming yourself to stay alive. The human activity around your territory intensifies to levels that make foraging during safe hours nearly impossible. Bright lights operate throughout the night, disrupting the darkness you need for concealment. Heavy machinery runs around the clock, producing vibrations and noise that mask the subtle sounds you rely on for navigation and threat detection. Your world is being systematically stripped of the conditions that make pangolin survival possible. You develop new hiding spots deeper underground, burrowing into spaces barely large enough to contain your shrinking body. These refuges offer better concealment, but require more energy to access and provide no opportunities for hunting. You're trading immediate safety for long-term survival prospects, a calculation that makes sense only in the context of a world where all options are bad. Your 14th year opens with the brutal realization that your hunting grounds can no longer support even your diminished needs. The few remaining termite mounds in your territory produce barely enough insects to justify the energy cost of harvesting them. You're facing a mathematical impossibility. Staying requires more calories than the environment can provide, but leaving demands energy reserves you no longer possess. The decision to abandon your territory comes not through conscious choice, but through the simple recognition that choice no longer exists. You begin moving toward areas you haven't explored in years, driven by the desperate hope that somewhere beyond your current range, conditions might be marginally better. The journey becomes a one-way migration toward possibilities that probably don't exist. Your movement through unfamiliar terrain reveals the full scope of environmental destruction that has occurred during your years of territorial focus. Areas that once supported thriving ecosystems have been converted to agricultural monocultures that offer no resources for insect-dependent species. Rivers that once provided water and attracted prey have been channeled into concrete ditches that support no life at all. The few patches of natural habitat you encounter are already occupied by the survivors of other destroyed ecosystems, desperate animals competing for resources that were inadequate even before the competition intensified. You're not welcome in these refugee camps of displaced wildlife, and your weakened condition makes confrontation impossible. You move through like a ghost, taking nothing, leaving no trace. Your body begins shutting down non-essential systems to conserve energy for basic survival functions. Your sense of smell, once sharp enough to detect ant colonies from hundreds of meters away, becomes unreliable and inconsistent. Your hearing, previously capable of distinguishing between dozens of different insect sounds, now registers only the loudest and most obvious acoustic signals. You're losing the sensory capabilities that define pangolin existence. The insects you do manage to catch require increasingly desperate measures to obtain. You find yourself taking risks that your younger self would have recognized as suicidal, hunting in areas with heavy predator activity, foraging during daylight hours when concealment is impossible, expending more energy on individual hunts than the prey can possibly provide. Desperation has replaced strategy as your primary hunting methodology. Your scales, once your greatest protection, begin to feel like a burden as your body struggles to support their weight. The armor that preserved your life through countless encounters now drains energy you can't spare, but removing it isn't an option evolution provided. You're trapped inside protective equipment that your failing body can barely operate, like a knight whose strength is insufficient to bear his own mail. Sleep becomes increasingly elusive as hunger pangs interrupt your rest cycles. Your empty stomach produces acid that burns your throat and creates nausea that makes consuming the few insects you catch even more difficult. You're caught in a vicious cycle where poor nutrition prevents good sleep, and poor sleep makes successful hunting nearly impossible. Your 15th year arrives with your body operating at the absolute minimum level necessary to sustain life. Your movements have slowed to a careful shuffle that conserves energy but makes hunting extremely difficult. Your once magnificent claws can barely scratch through soft earth, let alone excavate the hardened structures where your prey shelters. You've become a shadow of your former self, recognizable as a pangolin only by your distinctive armor. The territory you've wandered into offers slightly better insect populations than your former range, but the improvement is marginal and temporary. These resources are being consumed by other displaced animals, and the human development that destroyed your original habitat is expanding into this area as well. You've bought time, but not much, and at a cost that may have been too high to justify. Your hunting attempts become increasingly futile as your body fails to perform the basic functions required for pangolin survival. Your claws slip off surfaces they once gripped effortlessly. Your tongue lacks the strength to penetrate deeply into insect colonies. Your legs struggle to support your weight during the crouching positions necessary for effective foraging. You're becoming a pangolin who can no longer effectively pangolin. The loneliness reaches existential levels that affect your will to continue surviving. You're not just alone in the immediate sense of lacking companions. You're alone in the deeper sense of being the last representative of a way of life that took millions of years to evolve and mere decades to destroy. Your existence has become a living memorial to something that no longer has a place in the modern world. Your digestive system, stressed beyond its design limits by years of poor nutrition and contaminated food sources, begins to fail in ways that make even successful hunting irrelevant. Insects that you manage to catch and consume pass through your system undigested, providing no nutritional benefit despite the energy cost of obtaining them. You're starving even when you eat, a biological impossibility that represents the final breakdown of your physiological systems. The environmental conditions continue to deteriorate as climate change accelerates beyond the pace your species could possibly adapt to accommodate. Temperature extremes force you to remain inactive for increasingly long periods, but the reduced activity makes hunting even more difficult when conditions do become tolerable. You're trapped in a cycle where survival requires activity that conditions make impossible. Your memory begins to fade in ways that compromise your ability to navigate even familiar territory. Landmarks you've used for years become unrecognizable. Routes you've traveled thousands of times lead to dead ends. Hiding spots you've relied on for safety prove to be illusions created by your failing cognitive functions. You're becoming lost in a landscape you once knew better than your own body. The few termite mounds remaining in your expanded range show clear signs of impending collapse. The insect populations that sustain them are under pressure from multiple sources: habitat destruction, chemical contamination, climate change, and the disruption of ecological relationships that took millennia to establish. You're witnessing the end of the food web that supported pangolin existence for millions of years. Your hunting becomes a tragic pantomime of your former skills. You go through the motions of excavation and foraging, but your claws lack the strength to break through protective barriers. Your tongue can't reach deep enough to access viable prey, and your weakened condition makes the energy expenditure greater than any possible nutritional return. You're playing at being a pangolin while lacking the physical capability to actually function as one. Your 16th year begins not with the hope of renewal, but with the recognition that you may have reached the limits of what adaptation and persistence can accomplish. Your body weight has dropped below the threshold necessary to maintain basic metabolic functions. Your immune system, compromised by chronic malnutrition, struggles to fight off infections that would have been minor inconveniences in your prime. Every system is failing simultaneously, creating cascading problems that no single intervention could address. The human development that has been steadily encroaching on your territory reaches completion levels that eliminate the last vestiges of natural habitat. The few remaining trees are cut down, the final streams are diverted into underground pipes, and the last patches of native vegetation are replaced with landscaping that supports no wildlife whatsoever. Your world has been systematically erased and replaced with something that cannot sustain pangolin life. You find yourself making sounds you haven't produced since early childhood, distress calls that once brought your mother running, but now echo unheard through a landscape empty of your kind. The vocalizations seem to come from some primitive part of your brain that refuses to accept the reality of your situation, still hoping for rescue that evolution never prepared for circumstances like these. Your final hunting attempts become exercises in futility that you continue only because stopping would mean acknowledging defeat. Your claws scrape uselessly against surfaces they can no longer penetrate. Your tongue probes colonies too deep or too well defended for your diminished capabilities to access. You're going through the motions of being a pangolin while lacking the physical capacity to succeed at pangolin activities. The scales that have protected you for 16 years begin to loosen as your shrinking body can no longer support their attachment points properly. Individual scales fall away, leaving gaps in your armor that expose vulnerable flesh to environmental hazards you lack the energy to avoid. Your natural defenses are literally falling apart as your body fails to maintain the structures that define pangolin identity. Your sense of time becomes distorted as malnutrition affects your brain chemistry. Minutes feel like hours during failed hunting attempts, while days pass in what seems like moments when you're too weak to move. The rhythms that once governed your existence, sleeping, waking, hunting, resting, blend into a continuous struggle for survival that has no clear beginning or end. The territory you've wandered into during your final migrations offers no better prospects than the areas you've abandoned. The environmental destruction that drove you from your original range has followed you here, transforming previously viable habitats into biological deserts that can support neither predator nor prey. There is nowhere left to retreat, no remaining refuge where pangolin survival remains possible. Your body begins the final phase of system shutdown as starvation overwhelms your ability to maintain basic life functions. Your heartbeat becomes irregular as your cardiovascular system struggles without adequate nutrition. Your breathing grows labored as muscle weakness affects your ability to inflate your lungs properly. Your brain function deteriorates as glucose deprivation impacts your ability to think clearly or make rational decisions. Most, you find a quiet spot beneath a fallen log, not because it offers particular safety or comfort, but because your legs can no longer support the weight of continued travel. Your body curls naturally into the defensive position that has protected you countless times throughout your life, but this time, it's not a response to external threat. It's simply the most comfortable way to arrange your failing limbs. The sounds of the modern world continue around you. Traffic, construction, machinery, but they fade into background noise as your hearing becomes less acute. The smells of human civilization, once so intrusive and alarming, barely register as your olfactory system shuts down. Your world is contracting to the immediate sensations of your own body as life slowly ebbs away. Your final thoughts, if they can be called thoughts, are not complex or philosophical. They're the simple recognition patterns that have guided your entire existence. The awareness of your own body's position, the automatic assessment of immediate surroundings for threats or opportunities, the instinctive calculation of energy expenditure versus potential gain. You remain fundamentally a pangolin until consciousness finally fades. Your story ends not with drama or violence, but with the quiet cessation of biological processes that could no longer be sustained in an environment that had become incompatible with pangolin existence. You represent the end of an evolutionary line that stretches back millions of years, a genetic heritage that took countless generations to develop but only decades to destroy. Life as a pangolin might be rough, but there's another animal out there that has it way worse. Trust me, it's wild. Check out the video and see for yourself. The forest floor becomes your final resting place, a quiet end to a story that began in darkness 16 years ago. Your body, once a masterpiece of evolutionary engineering, slowly returns to the earth that shaped your species across millions of years. The scales that protected you through countless encounters will eventually scatter, each one a small monument to a way of life that the modern world couldn't accommodate. But your death isn't the end of the story. It's part of a larger pattern playing out across the globe. In scattered pockets of remaining habitat, other pangolins face the same impossible mathematics of survival. Some are younger, still clinging to territories that shrink daily. Others are older, their bodies bearing the accumulated damage of lives spent adapting to increasingly hostile conditions. All of them are writing the final chapters of one of evolution's most remarkable experiments. A few hundred miles from where you drew your last breath, a female pangolin gives birth to twins in a burrow carved from clay soil. She doesn't know that her species is disappearing, doesn't understand that her offspring represent a statistical anomaly in a world where pangolin births have become increasingly rare. She simply follows the ancient imperative to nurture and protect, feeding them with milk produced by a body that's already showing signs of malnutrition. These newborns enter a world far more hostile than the one you were born into. The insect populations they'll depend on are already under severe pressure. The habitats they'll need to establish territories in are fragmenting faster than young pangolins can learn to navigate them. The human threat that shaped your entire existence has intensified to levels that make survival not just difficult, but mathematically improbable. Yet they persist, because persistence is encoded in pangolin DNA. The mother teaches them the same lessons your mother taught you, passing down hunting techniques and survival strategies that took millions of years to perfect. She doesn't know these skills may be obsolete before her children reach adulthood. She simply does what pangolin mothers have always done, hoping that somehow it will be enough. Across the continent, research stations document the decline with clinical precision. Population counts drop annually, breeding success rates plummet, and genetic diversity contracts as isolated populations lose contact with each other. The numbers tell a story of inexorable decline, mathematical projections that point toward extinction within decades rather than centuries. But numbers can't capture what's really being lost. Each dead pangolin represents the end of a unique combination of learned behaviors, territorial knowledge, and genetic adaptations that took a lifetime to develop. When you died, 16 years of accumulated wisdom died with you. Knowledge about hunting grounds, predator avoidance, seasonal patterns, and survival strategies that no other pangolin possessed in exactly the same combination. The termite mounds you once harvested begin to recover in your absence, their populations rebounding without the predation pressure your feeding provided. But recovery isn't restoration. The ecological relationships that connected pangolins to their prey evolved over millions of years and can't be recreated by simple population growth. The absence of pangolins creates ripple effects that cascade through entire ecosystems in ways scientists are only beginning to understand. In remote corners of protected reserves, conservation efforts attempt to maintain breeding populations through artificial management. Pangolins are provided with supplemental food, medical care, and protection from human threats. These programs achieve modest success in keeping individuals alive, but they can't recreate the complex environmental conditions that shaped pangolin evolution. The protected pangolins survive, but they're not quite the same species that roamed free across ancient landscapes. Their hunting skills atrophy without constant practice on wild prey. Their territorial instincts weaken in managed environments where boundaries are artificially maintained. Their genetic diversity contracts as small breeding populations inevitably become inbred despite careful management. These conservation pangolins represent hope and tragedy in equal measure. They're living proof that the species can survive human care, but also evidence of how far pangolins have fallen from their evolutionary peak. They exist in a kind of biological limbo, too altered to return to the wild, too wild to fully adapt to captivity. The genetic material frozen in research facilities tells part of pangolin history that will survive even if the living animals don't. DNA sequences preserve the molecular instructions that built your claws, shaped your scales, and programmed your hunting instincts. Future scientists might someday use this information to understand how evolution crafted such specialized perfection, but understanding isn't the same as preservation. Your species joins a growing list of evolutionary masterpieces that couldn't adapt quickly enough to survive human impact. Like the passenger pigeon, the thylacine, and countless other specialists who thrived for millions of years before disappearing in mere decades, pangolins represent the collision between deep time and accelerated change. The forests where pangolins once thrived continue to shrink as development pressure intensifies. Each cleared acre eliminates habitat that took centuries to mature, destroying ecological relationships that took millennia to establish. The mathematical reality is stark. Habitat disappears faster than it can be created, and pangolins need mature ecosystems to survive. Climate change adds another layer of pressure that makes adaptation even more difficult. Temperature and rainfall patterns shift outside the ranges pangolin prey species can tolerate. Seasonal cues that guided reproductive cycles for millions of years become unreliable. The environmental stability that allowed such extreme specialization is disappearing faster than genetic adaptation can accommodate. The economic forces driving habitat destruction operate on scales and timelines that make pangolin survival irrelevant to their calculations. The profit margins from agricultural conversion or urban development dwarf any value that might be assigned to preserving pangolin habitat. The mathematics of modern economics don't include variables for evolutionary heritage or ecological complexity. Yet somewhere in the remaining fragments of suitable habitat, young pangolins continue to learn the ancient arts of survival. They develop the same hunting skills you mastered, navigate territorial disputes using strategies your ancestors perfected, and face challenges with the same combination of intelligence and instinct that carried your species through millions of years of environmental change. These survivors represent the leading edge of pangolin adaptation to modern conditions. They're developing new hunting techniques for degraded environments, learning to avoid human threats more effectively than previous generations, and finding ways to extract nutrition from food sources their ancestors never encountered. Evolution continues, even as extinction looms. But evolution is a slow process, and the changes threatening pangolin survival are happening too quickly for genetic adaptation to keep pace. The survivors aren't adapting fast enough to overcome the rate of environmental destruction. They're buying time, not solving the fundamental problem of habitat loss and human encroachment. The story of pangolin extinction, when it's finally written, will serve as a case study in how specialization becomes vulnerability when environmental conditions change rapidly. Pangolins were perfectly adapted to a world that no longer exists, masters of a craft that modern conditions make obsolete. Their tragedy is that they were too good at being pangolins to become something else. In the final accounting, pangolins represent both the pinnacle of evolutionary achievement and its limitations. They demonstrate what millions of years of natural selection can create when given stable conditions and adequate time. They also show what happens when those conditions disappear faster than adaptation can respond. Your individual story, birth and growth, territorial establishment, reproduction, decline, and death, mirrors the larger story of your species. You lived fully as a pangolin, mastering every skill your genetics made possible, adapting to challenges that would have overwhelmed less specialized animals. You succeeded at everything evolution prepared you for, but the evolution didn't prepare any pangolin for the modern world. The legacy you leave behind isn't in offspring who survived to carry on your genetic line. It's in the brief demonstration that pangolin perfection was possible, that evolution could create something as remarkable as a creature perfectly designed for harvesting insects from the most inaccessible locations. You proved that pangolins could be magnificent, even if magnificence wasn't enough to ensure survival. The silence that now fills the spaces where pangolin communications once carried across the landscape represents more than the absence of individual animals. It's the silence of broken ecological relationships, interrupted evolutionary processes, and genetic heritage that took millions of years to develop but mere decades to destroy. Future paleontologists may discover your fossilized remains millions of years from now, studying your bone structure and scale patterns to understand how evolution crafted such specialized anatomy. They'll marvel at the precision engineering of your claws, the sophisticated overlapping of your protective scales, the perfect adaptation of your tongue for reaching deep into insect colonies. But they won't be able to reconstruct from fossil evidence the behavioral complexity that made you truly remarkable. Your hunting strategies, territorial knowledge, social interactions, and adaptive responses to environmental challenges will be lost forever, knowledge that died with the last individuals who possessed it. The termite mounds and ant colonies that once supported pangolin populations will eventually develop new ecological relationships in your absence. Other predators may partially fill the niche you once occupied, but none will replicate the precise specialization that made pangolins unique. The ecological space pangolins, carved out through millions of years of evolution, will reshape itself around your absence. Your story ends, but it also continues in the genetic heritage preserved in research facilities, the ecological knowledge recorded by scientists who studied your species, and the conservation efforts that may someday restore pangolin populations to portions of their former range. These fragments of pangolin existence aren't equivalent to the living, breathing, hunting, reproducing animals that once thrived across multiple continents, but they represent hope that something of your species' remarkable evolutionary achievement might survive. The world moves forward without pangolins, adapting to their absence just as it adapted to their presence millions of years ago. Ecosystems reorganize, ecological niches shift, and life finds new ways to exploit the resources pangolins once monopolized. The planet's capacity for biological innovation continues, but it does so without one of evolution's most remarkable creations. Your species' extinction, when it finally occurs, will mark the end of an evolutionary experiment that produced creatures capable of surviving in conditions that would challenge any other mammal. Pangolins proved that extreme specialization could be a successful survival strategy for millions of years, until environmental conditions changed too rapidly for even the most sophisticated adaptations to accommodate. The story of pangolins becomes a cautionary tale about the fragility of evolutionary achievement and the speed with which human activity can eliminate the products of millions of years of natural selection. It demonstrates that no level of specialization, no degree of adaptation, no amount of evolutionary success provides immunity from extinction when environmental conditions change faster than genetic adaptation can respond. In the end, you lived the only life evolution made possible for a pangolin in the modern world. You demonstrated every capability your species possessed, pushed the boundaries of pangolin adaptability to their limits, and survived longer than the mathematical probabilities suggested was possible. You were everything a pangolin could be, which was magnificent and ultimately insufficient. Your death represents not just the end of an individual life, but the closing of a chapter in Earth's biological history that can never be rewritten. When the last pangolin dies, the world loses something irreplaceable, a living masterpiece of evolutionary engineering that took millions of years to create and can never be recreated. That loss diminishes not just the biological diversity of the planet, but the very concept of what evolution can achieve, given adequate time and stable conditions. The silence where pangolin sounds once filled the night air serves as a memorial to possibilities that will never again exist, evolutionary pathways that have been permanently closed, and genetic heritage that represents millions of years of successful adaptation rendered obsolete by changes that occurred too rapidly for even the most sophisticated biological systems to accommodate. Life as a pangolin was indeed rough, shaped by constant challenges that tested every adaptation your species developed over millions of years. But in facing those challenges, you demonstrated the remarkable capacity for survival that evolution can create when given sufficient time and appropriate conditions. Your story honors that achievement, even as it documents its ultimate failure to overcome the unprecedented challenges of the modern world. In the final moments of your existence, your body becomes one with the earth that sustained your ancestors for countless generations. The scales that once gleamed in filtered sunlight now lie still, each one a testament to evolutionary perfection that couldn't overcome the mathematics of extinction. Your claws, worn smooth by years of excavation, curl inward one last time as your nervous system shuts down with the quiet dignity that marked your entire life. The forest around your resting place continues its ancient rhythms, indifferent to the significance of what has just occurred. Insects emerge from their colonies, following patterns established long before pangolins existed and destined to continue long after your species becomes nothing more than fossil impressions in sedimentary rock. The termite mounds you once harvested stand like monuments to a relationship that took millions of years to perfect and mere decades to sever. But your death isn't just an ending, it's part of a larger transformation occurring across the planet as specialized species yield to generalists better equipped for rapid environmental change. The ecological niches that once supported creatures like you are being filled by animals capable of eating anything, living anywhere, adapting quickly to whatever conditions humans create. The age of specialists is closing, replaced by an era that rewards flexibility over perfection. Somewhere in the remaining fragments of pangolin habitat, a mother struggles to feed her young as the insect colonies they depend on continue their steady decline. She doesn't understand that she's among the last of her kind, doesn't realize that the hunting grounds she's teaching her offspring to navigate may not exist when they reach maturity. She simply follows instincts honed by millions of years of evolution, doing what pangolin mothers have always done, despite the futility of her efforts. These final pangolins carry within their DNA the accumulated wisdom of countless generations, genetic instructions for building the perfect insect hunting machine, behavioral programs for surviving in environments that no longer exist, physiological adaptations for exploiting resources that are disappearing faster than evolution can adapt to their absence. They represent the end of an evolutionary line that achieved biological perfection only to discover that perfection has become obsolete. The researchers studying your species document each extinction event with scientific precision, adding data points to models that predict the complete collapse of pangolin populations within decades. Their papers describe the mechanisms of decline in clinical language that can't capture the tragedy of watching evolution's masterpieces disappear one by one. Statistics replace stories, population dynamics obscure individual struggles, and mathematical models predict outcomes that feel inevitable even as they remain heartbreaking. Conservation efforts continue in facilities around the world, but they're preserving shadows of what pangolins once were. The animals in captivity survive but don't truly live. They exist in artificial environments that meet their basic needs while eliminating the challenges that shaped their evolution. These pangolins eat provided food instead of hunting, occupy assigned spaces instead of defending territories, and breed according to human schedules instead of seasonal imperatives. The genetic material stored in research freezers contains the molecular blueprints for reconstructing pangolin anatomy, but DNA sequences can't preserve the behavioral complexity that made your species remarkable. The hunting strategies passed down through generations, the territorial knowledge accumulated over lifetimes, the social interactions that governed pangolin society, all of this dies with the individuals who possessed it, knowledge that can never be recovered once it's lost. Future scientists might someday decode every gene in the pangolin genome, map every protein that shaped your scales, understand every biochemical pathway that powered your metabolism. But they'll never witness a pangolin in its natural habitat, never observe the hunting techniques that took millions of years to perfect, never document the territorial disputes that maintained population balance across vast landscapes. The living pangolin, the complete organism, interacting with its environment, is disappearing forever. The world reshapes itself around pangolin absence with the same indifference it showed to pangolin presence. Ecosystems reorganize, predator-prey relationships shift, and ecological niches redistribute among the survivors. The planet's biological systems demonstrate their remarkable resilience by adapting to function without creatures that once seemed essential to their operation. Life continues, but it continues without pangolins. Your species joins the growing list of evolutionary achievements that couldn't survive human impact. Like countless other specialists who thrived for millions of years before disappearing in mere decades, pangolins represent the collision between deep time and accelerated change. They were perfectly adapted to a stable world, masters of a craft that became obsolete when stability disappeared. The tragedy isn't just that pangolins are disappearing, it's that they're disappearing so completely. Other endangered species leave behind closely related cousins who share similar traits, preserve parts of their evolutionary heritage, even if the original species is lost. But pangolins are so unique, so specialized, so unlike anything else, that their extinction eliminates entire categories of biological possibility. When pangolins disappear, the world loses something that can never evolve again. The silence where pangolin communications once carried across the landscape becomes permanent, an acoustic void that will never again be filled by the sounds of your species. The scent markers that once defined territorial boundaries fade without renewal, leaving no trace that pangolins ever claimed these spaces as their own. The paths worn smooth by countless pangolin footsteps gradually disappear under new vegetation, erasing the physical evidence of millions of years of occupation. Yet in that silence, in that absence, something profound remains. The memory of what evolution can achieve when given adequate time and stable conditions. The demonstration that life can create solutions to survival, challenges so elegant, so precisely calibrated, so perfectly adapted that they seem almost miraculous in their sophistication. Pangolins proved that biological systems can reach levels of specialization that border on the supernatural, even if that specialization ultimately becomes a vulnerability when conditions change too rapidly for adaptation to keep pace. Your individual story, from helpless newborn to territorial master to evolutionary dead end, mirrors the larger narrative of your species and countless others facing similar fates. You lived fully within the constraints evolution provided, pushed every adaptation to its limits, and demonstrated everything pangolins could be in a world that no longer supports pangolin existence. Your life was both a triumph of biological engineering and a tragedy of environmental destruction. The legacy you leave behind isn't measured in offspring who survived to carry forward your genetic line. It's found in the brief, shining example of what evolution can create when natural selection operates without human interference. You embodied millions of years of refinement, represented the pinnacle of pangolin achievement, and demonstrated that life can produce wonders beyond human imagination when given the time and space to develop without constraint. As your remains slowly decompose and return to the soil that nurtured the forests your ancestors called home, they carry with them the molecular remnants of an evolutionary experiment that succeeded beyond measure before failing completely. The atoms that once formed your scales will eventually become part of new organisms, but none of those future creatures will replicate the precise combination of traits that made you recognizably, uniquely, magnificently a pangolin. The world moves forward into an uncertain future, one in which the biological diversity that took billions of years to develop continues disappearing at rates that exceed anything in the geological record. Your species' extinction contributes to a larger pattern of loss that's reshaping the planet's living systems in ways that won't be fully understood for generations. The Earth is becoming a simpler place, populated by fewer specialists and more generalists, offering less wonder and more predictability. But even as pangolins disappear, their story serves an important purpose. It reminds us that evolution can create miracles given adequate time and appropriate conditions. It demonstrates that life can solve problems with elegance that exceeds human engineering. It proves that biological systems can achieve perfection within their particular domains, even if that perfection becomes obsolete when domains shift faster than adaptation can accommodate. In the end, you were everything a pangolin could be in the modern world, which was magnificent and ultimately insufficient. You mastered every skill your genetics made possible, adapted to challenges that would have overwhelmed less specialized creatures, and survived longer than mathematical probability suggested was reasonable. You honored the evolutionary heritage that shaped your species across millions of years, even as you witnessed its final failure to overcome unprecedented environmental pressures. Your death marks not just the end of an individual life, but the closing of a chapter in Earth's biological history that can never be reopened. When the last pangolin dies, the world loses something irreplaceable, a living demonstration of evolution's creative power, a masterpiece of biological engineering, a reminder that life can achieve wonders when given the freedom to explore its full potential. The silence that follows your passing serves as both memorial and warning. Memorial to the remarkable creatures that once inhabited this planet, warning about the consequences of environmental destruction that occurs faster than biological systems can accommodate. Your species' extinction diminishes not just the diversity of life on Earth, but the very concept of what evolution can achieve when operating within its natural parameters. Life as a pangolin was indeed rough, marked by constant challenges that tested every adaptation your species developed over millions of years of evolution. But in facing those challenges with grace, intelligence, and unwavering determination, you demonstrated the remarkable resilience that natural selection can create when given sufficient time and appropriate conditions. Your story honors that achievement while documenting its ultimate inability to overcome the unprecedented challenges of the modern world. Here you can find the next story. Click on it. Until then, see you soon.